The email arrived at 9:17 a.m., just as Daniel was wiping yogurt off his tie in the office restroom. It was short, cold, official. The CEO would like to see you. Private meeting, 10 a.m. Daniel stared at the screen until the letters blurred. His reflection in the mirror looked as exhausted as he felt. Dark circles under his eyes, faint lines carved there by sleepless nights and unpaid bills. Single father. Junior analyst, widower, the kind of employee companies kept only until they found someone better. His stomach tightened. He had been late twice this month because his 5-year-old daughter, Lily, refused to let go of his neck at daycare. He had left early last week when the school nurse called about her fever. He had answered work emails at 2 a.m. with one hand while holding her with the other. Private meeting. In corporate language, that usually meant one thing. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that sometimes life changes in a single unexpected moment. Daniel walked back to his desk, as if the floor were made of glass. Around him, the office buzzed with quiet ambition, keyboards clicking, phones vibrating, polite laughter from conference rooms. He had never fully belonged here, not since the accident. 3 years ago, his wife Emma had kissed him goodbye on a rainy Tuesday morning. 3 hours later, a truck had skidded through a red light. After that, time had stopped making sense. There were hospital corridors, white sheets, hands that felt suddenly empty. There was Lily asking why Mommy wouldn't wake up. Daniel had promised Emma once that he would always protect their daughter. He hadn't known that sometimes protection meant simply staying afloat. He had turned down promotions because they required travel. He had skipped networking dinners because babysitters cost money he didn't have. He had eaten instant noodles at midnight so Lily could have fresh fruit in her lunchbox. And now the CEO wanted a private meeting. At 9:58, Daniel stood outside the executive floor. The carpet was softer here. The air smelled different, polished wood and quiet power. Through the glass walls he could see framed awards and city views that stretched endlessly, as if success were something you could touch. He knocked. The CEO, Margaret Lawson, was not what people expected. She was calm rather than loud, observant rather than intimidating. Her silver-streaked hair was always perfectly arranged, her posture straight without being rigid. She had built the company from a startup into a national firm in less than a decade. Daniel had spoken to her only once before. During a company-wide meeting, she gestured for him to sit. The door closed softly behind him, and the silence felt heavier than any speech. Daniel's mind raced. Had his performance slipped? Had someone complained? He had missed one internal deadline last month, the night Lily had nightmares about the accident and refused to sleep alone. He had submitted the report at 5:12 a.m. instead of midnight. Margaret studied him for a long moment, not coldly, carefully. He braced himself. She began speaking in a measured tone, explaining that the company had been reviewing team performance and internal feedback. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. Words like commitment, presence, and availability echoed in his ears. He imagined packing his desk into a cardboard box while colleagues avoided eye contact. Then she shifted. She mentioned the community outreach program the company quietly funded. Daniel barely remembered it, an initiative supporting employees facing personal hardship. He had never applied. Pride had stopped him. Or maybe fear. She slid a folder across the desk. Inside were printed emails. Daniel's hands trembled as he recognized the sender, his daughter's kindergarten teacher. The messages described Lily falling asleep in class some days, clutching a small photo of her mother. They mentioned Daniel arriving breathless, apologizing, still in work clothes, trying to balance everything alone. They praised his gentleness, the way he knelt to Lily's height before leaving, whispering something that always made her smile despite her tears. Daniel's chest tightened. Margaret spoke quietly about resilience, about silent struggles that often went unnoticed in competitive environments. She revealed that several employees had nominated him for recognition, not for sales numbers or spreadsheets, but for something else entirely, for character, for perseverance. Daniel blinked rapidly, unsure if he was mishearing her. He had spent years believing he was barely surviving. that he was constantly one mistake away from losing everything, that his grief made him weaker in a world that rewarded strength. Margaret told him she had lost her own father at a young age. She understood what it meant to grow up watching a single parent fight exhaustion every day. She said companies often measured the wrong things. Then she revealed what truly stunned him. The company was launching a new division focused on family-friendly workplace innovation, flexible scheduling systems, remote integration models, childcare partnerships. And they wanted someone who understood the reality behind those words. They wanted him to help design it. Daniel felt as though the room tilted. He had come prepared to defend himself, to apologize, to beg if necessary. Instead, he was being asked to lead, not because he was perfect, not because he had sacrificed sleep for quarterly targets, but because he had shown up, imperfectly, honestly, consistently, for his daughter. Margaret explained that leadership was not only about profit margins, it was about empathy, culture, building something sustainable. She offered him a new role, Director of Employee Well-Being Strategy, flexible hours, a salary increase, resources to develop real programs that could help parents like him. Daniel's throat closed. For years he had hidden his struggles, afraid they made him look unreliable. Now those very struggles were being recognized as strength. He thought of the nights Lily cried for her mother, the mornings he braided her hair awkwardly after watching online tutorials, the birthdays where he baked crooked cakes that leaned sideways but tasted sweet. He thought of Emma. She had always believed in him more than he believed in himself. Tears burned behind his eyes, but he held them back. Not out of shame, but because he needed to breathe. Margaret's final words stayed with him long after he left the office. She said the company did not want employees who pretended to have perfect lives. It wanted humans who could build a humane workplace. When Daniel stepped back onto the regular floor, the office looked different. The same desks, the same monitors. But the weight on his shoulders had shifted. The rumors began immediately. People had seen him called upstairs. They expected the worst. When he returned with red eyes and a stunned expression, whispers spread. By the afternoon, an internal announcement email was sent. It outlined the new initiative. It named Daniel as its lead. The stunned silence across the office was almost audible. Some coworkers looked surprised. Others looked inspired. A few looked thoughtful in a way they hadn't before. Over the next weeks, Daniel's life began to change in quiet but profound ways. He no longer hid Lily's drawings in his drawer. He framed one on his desk. He openly blocked calendar time for school events. Instead of apologizing for being a father, he integrated it into who he was professionally. He met with employees who had been silently struggling, a mother caring for a sick parent, a father navigating divorce, a young intern battling anxiety. Stories poured out once someone made space for them. Policies shifted. Remote work options expanded. Emergency childcare support was introduced. Flexible hours became normalized rather than whispered about. Productivity didn't fall, it improved. Morale strengthened. Retention rates rose. The company culture softened without losing its edge. And at home, Lily noticed something too. Daniel laughed more. He wasn't checking emails during bedtime stories as often. He attended her school recital without glancing at his watch. One evening, as they sat on the small balcony of their apartment watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, Lily leaned against him and said she liked when he smiled with his whole face. Daniel realized something powerful then. He had spent years thinking survival was enough. But sometimes, survival transforms into purpose when someone sees your struggle and chooses to honor it instead of punish it. The company held a town hall meeting months later to discuss the success of the new initiative. Margaret invited Daniel to share his journey. Standing on the stage, lights warm against his face, he looked out at hundreds of employees. He didn't speak about spreadsheets. He spoke about grief, about guilt, about the fear of not being enough. He spoke about the quiet heroism of single parents, caregivers, and anyone holding invisible weight. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. And somewhere in that crowd were people who, for the first time, felt seen. Daniel ended his speech by saying something simple. Strength is not the absence of struggle, it is the courage to keep showing up. The applause that followed wasn't just polite corporate clapping. It was real, sustained, emotional. That night, he tucked Lily into bed and told her about his day. She didn't fully understand corporate initiatives or leadership roles, But she understood pride. She wrapped her small arms around his neck and whispered that Mommy would be proud too. Daniel finally allowed the tears to fall. If this story has touched your heart so far, take a moment to engage with this video, like it, share it, and let others feel this reminder that compassion still exists in unexpected places. And before we close, I have a special request. Comment the word hope if you believe that even the hardest seasons of life can lead to something beautiful. Years later, employees would still talk about the day a single dad was pulled aside for a private talk by the CEO. They would remember how everyone assumed the worst, how fear hung in the air, and how what was revealed stunned everyone. Not because it was dramatic or scandalous, but because it was compassionate. Because instead of being told he wasn't enough, Daniel was shown that he was more than enough. The meeting that began with dread ended with dignity. The story that could have been about loss became one about transformation. And in a world that often rewards noise over nuance, speed over sensitivity, Margaret Lawson chose to elevate empathy. Daniel never forgot that morning. Not the fear, not the relief, not the way his entire future pivoted in a single hour. But more importantly, he never forgot what it taught him. That sometimes the door you're most afraid to walk through is the one that leads you back to yourself. And sometimes being pulled aside doesn't mean you're about to lose everything. Sometimes it means someone finally sees you,